Good morning, everyone. I'm just checking to make sure that everyone is able to hear me and see the screen. If someone could respond in the chat, that would be great. Oh, I hear, yes. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. All right, we still have some people coming on, but we are going to get started so that we're respectful of everyone's time. So welcome. 2025 is here. I feel like it's going to be a good year. I feel like it's going to be a good year. It's coming in a bit hard on the weather if you're here in Ontario. We are in the northern end, I guess, of things. Well, we people in the south feel like we're in the north. We feel like we're not in the north, but we're in the kind of Barrie area. And yeah, we've got a lot of snow. So I see a lot of very familiar names. So thank you for always supporting us and attending today. And I also see some new names. So thank you for taking interest in what we do here and attending with us today. And hopefully everything is going to be helpful and going to start us right on the right foot because that is the topic of today's webinar. So we host quarterly webinars for 2025, but we may have kind of surprise or specialty webinars that we put up. They're all for free, but if there is something that kind of comes up or is kind of, we can't wait, we need to get the information out there, or it's in a certain topic. So sometimes we will have webinars that are specific to a specific sector and it's just going to be more applicable to you. So those will all be posted on our website. So definitely kind of come back every now and then and check that out and see what the webinar coming up is all about and see if you want to attend. All right. Now I just got to get all of my buttons working. Perfect. So for those of you that are new to Pro Ergonomics, we are an ergonomics first health and safety consulting and training firm. And we are incredibly passionate about what we do. And the primary reason is that ergonomics really has the opportunity to be proactive. Going back at a little bit of storytelling, when I was in university, I actually wanted to go into ergonomics and I was talked out of it by a TA. They're like, Alex, seriously, like, can't get more boring. All you do is take measurements. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe. And so I spent a year kind of revisiting and going back the clinical route and thinking, okay, well, maybe I want to work with, in maybe move on to physiotherapy or work with sports teams. And that's what I did. I worked with sports teams and I worked in the clinic and quickly realized that we really start off on the wrong foot once the injury has happened. And so that kind of goes into the whole conversation today is that we really want to start off on the right foot this year. We want to start off with a program that if we're kind of in a position where we're just building up a program, what does that look like? And we can some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is maybe a little bit further along the path than where you are right now. Definitely feel free to circle back, either put something in the chat or send me an email. I can even put my email address in there, the chat, so that you can reach me personally if you need to. And we can always come back and have a conversation of how do you, from everything that I'm going to talk about today, where maybe is your starting point? So please let me help because ergonomic programming, that's my jam. That's kind of where I get pretty excited because of that whole experience, back in university where I just felt like I wasn't effective. And obviously many of you once the injury happens, not only do we not have that proactive approach anymore, but we're dealing with a lot of negative emotions. We may start having some politics come in, and it just makes things harder. It just makes things so much harder than they need to be. So, our goal here is going to be to try and just create more of a foundation a good foundation for us to kind of move forward in 2025. So we'll be talking about kind of what does that blueprint for success look like on a high-end level? And then how are we going to get the things that we need? And we're going to use data for that, right? We're going to use some objective measures to try and get that buy-in, because some of this is a journey. You may not have this program right now. Some of you might, in which case, pat yourself on the back. You're doing great. And this may just be some confirmation and, reinvigoration for the year to come. We're going to be talking about resource allocation. I'm pretty passionate about this, along with the cultural integration, and we'll get more into that as we start. So, my first things I would like you guys to do, if you could, throw in the chat right now what you think are the 3 bullet points that you would like to accomplish this year as it pertains to your kind of ergonomics program. So I'll give you a minute or so, but if you could, just 3 bullet points. What is your plan or goal or objective for 2025? I had a couple people writing, but I don't see it come up. Perfect. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Cover aspects related to psychosocial and cognitive factors. Perfect. Good. Anybody have anything else? Sarah's talking. Thanks, Sarah. Okay. Not sure whether people are being shy or whether it's not coming up. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Sarah. Job rotation. Perfect. Guide for leadership. Related modified duties, back to restrictions given by doctors, and more proactive approach to avoid injuries. I love those. All of those are fabulous. And we're going to be touching on all 4 of those topics. So thank you, Jeff and Sarah. I appreciate that. If anyone else wants to throw things in, I can definitely, thanks, Yvonne, implement some reporting processes within the organization to make history easier to follow up. Love that. Help supervisors understand their responsibilities. We are actually going to talk about that a lot. Okay, I really feel like supervisors are kind of the linchpin in a bit of this ergonomic conversation. And it definitely travels forward with health and safety, as I'm sure you guys know, but we can definitely, sorry, there we go. We can kind of see how we can gain a little bit more traction when our supervisors are a little bit more empowered. So my first recommendation for 2025 is let's not reinvent the wheel. Okay, let's try and make this. I know in the past, I've done a lot of my last few sessions have been very program based, and easy is one of the things that people keep coming back. I need it to be easy, and I agree. So first thing I would like you to look at is what are some of the things that you are doing well, right? Whether you are under the HR portfolio, whether you are under the health and safety umbrella, wherever you are in your organization, maybe it's engineering, operations, what are you doing well? And what are those tools that are allowing you to do well? Because we're going to transfer those over to some of our ergonomic processes as well, right? Sometimes I see really good processes happening in health and safety, and yet we struggle almost doing the same thing on the ergo side. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth in the next slide. But what are we doing well and what can we transfer? Next question, who else is doing things well? Right? So is there a top performing department? Is there a kind of department that you align with similarly that, you know, is getting some success? What tools are they using that you could again adopt, right? And lastly, looking at what are your stakeholders? I know this is kind of commonplace and everyone talks about your stakeholders, but really ask the question, you know, what key stakeholders have integral data that you can use to help keep your ergonomic gears, you know, well greased, lubricated, and moving smoothly. All right. So let's kind of dive into this a little bit deeper. One second, okay. So first off, looking at maybe some of what your documentation is, right? Things that we have to do based on our Occupational Health and Safety Act. First one I can think of is your workplace inspections. Okay. Review your workplace inspection for how well it's identifying ergonomic risk. Okay, so a lot of people, whether you have a open form where you just kind of have like an ongoing list that you create and it's more open, or whether you have a checklist, either way, I think it's important to somehow communicate the ergonomic content in your workplace inspection forms. So the main reason being is because a lot of time when I see workplace inspections being done, depending on where it is, we often will try to find kind of a low volume time, right? Where a place where we can go because we're a committee going out. We can go, we can look around, and we're not going to be intruding anything. We're not going to be bothering anyone, you know, specifically when we're looking at some of our colleges and education systems, our school boards, right? We'll try and do some of these inspections when we're not going to be an interruption to a class or a meeting or something else. Similarly with production, right? We don't want to be stomping through a production process and disrupting that if we know that the line's going to be down and we can go out and do the inspection then. The problem is with that, you are not going to see the ergonomic issues because you need a human. You need a body in play doing the work for you to kind of be able to capture and recognize that, wait a minute, that doesn't look quite right. That should be better. They could be working easier, smarter, not harder, all of these things. So go back a step, look at your workplace inspections. It's something that has to be done anyways. It's likely something you're doing well because it's been in our program for decades, years. And so look at the ergonomics element, whether it be something you need to say, you know, talk to two people about the ergonomic implications, whether it be a checklist component where you're actually spelling out some of the things you want people to look for. But that's easy peasy. You have it, you're doing it. We just need to modify the form. The other thing we may be doing is looking at some of our pre-start reviews or product purchasing, right? So we often will have good systems in place for purchasing tools, let's say, or, you know, mobile equipment and vetting that for safety. How can we vet that for ergonomics as well? Right? So using some of those. And another one is going to be our incident investigations. This is something that we'll kind of circle back to when we start getting into that supervisor conversation. But I often find that my incident investigations that I audit with my clients, great when it's health and safety or acute trauma based. Really well done, very thorough, root cause analysis, chef's kiss, all of the things. And then I'll see some, if I see some, let's put that caveat in there. If I'm able to find incident reports that are doing a good job kind of investigating an MSD or ergonomic type issue, we lose a little traction. And it's understandable. We don't have a who. Well, we do have a who. We have a who. We don't have a what. We don't have a where. We don't have a when. We don't have a how, right? So answering a lot of the questions that we would typically ask in an incident investigation becomes harder. So really looking at, again, this is a system we have in place. It is a well-oiled cog in our program. How can we expand that out? Right? So some of the other things when we talk about, well, what are other people doing well that we might be able to borrow or piggyback on? So looking at, when we're looking at maybe our maintenance department, look at their PM schedules, right? Things like office chairs, things like carts, low-hanging fruit for ergonomic program development on a proactive stage, but it's something we often don't consider. We get chairs and we do lots of office assessments, and I have chunks of foam hanging off. I have components that aren't working properly. And so that may need to be a conversation. Do we need to get maybe some training for our maintenance department or our facilities so they can help us with these issues? Are we going to use an outside, maybe it's the vendor that you're actually purchasing your equipment from, but really looking at, equipment doesn't last forever. It's going to wear out. How can we make sure that we're not losing some of our foothold of doing something really good by buying a good chair, a good piece of, ergonomic aid, but just letting time or misuse or wear and tear kind of degrade that control. Engineering has tons and tons and tons of things that they may have. So looking at your Kaizens, your Pokeokes, things like that. And if you're in an industry, well, maybe you don't have some of those that are happening, do a bit of research because they're failure model based kind of tools that really elevate some of the issues you may be having in a very objective way. And that's really going to heighten both the productivity and the overall implementation of any controls that you put in afterwards, right? They are usually quite spot on. And then obviously as HR, how are we communicating and getting that information from our employees? Do we have employee suggestion boxes? How are we tapping into what really is our key asset, which is the experts, and they're going to be the employees themselves, right? So we obviously have your stakeholders that you may want to start tapping into and building relationship with, engineering, your continuous improvement, all of that kind of group that are building things or laying out work areas. Could even be IT, who's purchasing office equipment or your computer systems. The number of times we go in and everyone's got these, brand new monitors and none of them adjust. Right? None of them are on that height adjustable pedestal. Sorry, I'm giggling right now. I talk with a lot of hand gestures and I realize you guys can't see me. But we have these pedestals and it would have been, yes, a slight cost, but it's nowhere near the costs that you're going to spend to have each one of those people who start having neck issues getting assessed and then having the replacement either monitor or Band-Aid solution of a riser put in. So again, kind of looking at some of these things to kind of build out who are our stakeholders that can give us the information that we need. Okay, so we really want to try, and this would be a great time, beginning January. And I would suggest trying to do it quickly, like we're at the 25th already. So if you haven't, meet with some of your other departments, understand what their ergonomic issues maybe are, but also try and figure out how they can, there's a movie, how they can help you help them, right? So have those meetings, make sure that we are kind of understanding what their issues that you're going to be dealing with at some point as health and safety or HR, and how you can be better prepared when they come down the pipeline. Gather that information that they're collecting, right? That's easy stuff you don't have to do, but that you could benefit from. And then going back to using some of our standardized templates, right? If you need to use or partner with a specialist or a vendor, then this would be a good time to start making some of those relationships as well. Okay, so when we look at we want our decision making in 2025 to be driven not through politics, not through who's speaking the loudest, not through an external relationships agenda, right? We don't want WSIB or doctors dictating what we do within our own program. And so we want to drive our decision making through data. So where are our biggest data points that we have and that we maintain? The first one and the easiest one is going to be your injuries. Now, as soon as I say injuries, we need to acknowledge you are working reactively, right? The injury has already happened. We're already in kind of that step back stage. So what can we do here? If you are struggling with whether it be WSIB costs, whether it be, again, those external interventions, we love getting the doctor's note that says they need a new chair. Okay, they need a new chair. First off, we just got new chairs last year. Why do they need a new chair? It's a brand new chair. Second off, you don't even know what our chair looks like. So how do you know we need a new chair? So part of what we can start doing in 2025 is definitely we need to make sure we have our PDAs, CDAs, or JDAs. So Jeff, you were talking about looking at that psychosocial component and that cognitive. Your CDAs are going to be your standardized form to get that done, right? So looking at, well, what does that template look like? Secondly, looking at how is that template going to align with our return to work process? I've seen a lot of cognitive demands templates out there that answer questions, but yet they don't help put the connections or the job match together when it comes to returning people to work with cognitive impairment or limitations. So really kind of looking at the structure of your form to make sure it's going to allow you to do what you need to do with it. It's not about creating a job description, right? That's not what we're doing. We have those, which we might use, right? That might be another part of our documentation that we start to pull. It's about having a tool that's going to be helpful. And what is it going to be helpful for? It's going to be helpful for job matching, aligning our job restrictions with the job or our personal employees restrictions with the job. Okay, so we need to have those. If those are not something you have and you know that part of your drain, right, whether it be mentally, whether it be financially or time, is managing injuries, your PDAs can help just really speed that process up and make it very clear. This is the demand, this is the restriction, yes, no, maybe we have a match. And so when I say that, not to spend too much time on that, yes, it's a match because it says no sitting over half an hour. We don't have sitting over half an hour. So it's a match. We don't have to go any further. No is that pure, it's not a match, right? We have no sitting over half an hour. Well, they sit the full hour. So that's not really a match. But then we have the maybe. What happens if it's no sitting for half an hour and it's a no right now, but if we put some kind of sit stand option in there, well, then it's a yes, right? So that's kind of how we work our job matching. And it should be that simple. It should be that clear, that concise. It all depends on the documentation you're creating and the documentation you're receiving, which kind of comes into that last point. We need to start with our WSIB and doctor relations, making sure that the data we are getting is objective. That is within our rights. That is all that we should be getting from them. And then it is our job to manage our program under the WSIA. And so what does that look like, right? It means I don't accept, oh, they just are going to have time off. That is not objective medical. That is not giving me information on their restrictions. Definitely not doctors or WSIB recommending equipment when they have no clue what you are doing. So really, we're trying to make some of that information more maybe readily available with our WSIB at least, and then pushing back on our doctors to make sure that they are giving us only what they should be giving us, not what the employee is dictating, and definitely not what they in their position feel like we should be doing. Nope. All we need from you is the objective medical of what their functional abilities are. Okay. If your biggest issue is more production related, right? Maybe we are having high turnover. Maybe we are having lots of errors and, maybe a lot of complaints from customer service issues. Maybe we are having a lot, and these two can go hand in hand, right? If I have high injuries, well, that may mean I have a lot of people on lost time, which means I may not be having people to do the work I need done, which means I'm not keeping up with our productivity standards. So how does that play in? If you're looking at production, this is not necessarily a PDA that we're needing, right? We need something that's going to elicit change. PDAs don't elicit change. They are a tool to match with your functional abilities. Your risk assessments are going to do a couple of things. They are going to provide you with your hotspots, right? We're going to know exactly when we are exceeding ergonomic guidelines and putting the most risk on our employees. Okay. Secondly, we want to make sure we're using standards and guidelines. Again, going back to that data-driven, we have standards out there that's quite, clearly will state, nope, we can't do that job based on the conditions that you're putting. So how can we redefine those? So, and this section here is something that you can do that can be starting to build your proactive. So you may start doing it in tandem with your injuries as a reactive program, fighting fires, and trying to make it clear to everyone why you're not fighting every fire and you're only fighting the big ones, because they're not going to understand necessarily what's exceeding guidelines. But that can be your strategy, your fairness, your argument to say, we are addressing this right now because right now this is exceeding guidelines and the thing you are speaking to isn't. We've assessed it and it is below guidelines. Okay, so we definitely have that. And also design reviews. Now, design reviews are your epitome of proactive because literally there's no one at that doing that job at that stage. So whether it is, you're building out an office and you're looking at the equipment before you even hired the person to, occupy that office, that would be going into your design review. If you're bringing in a new process, okay, looking at the design elements and where are the ergonomic kind of yellow flags going up so that we can kind of hit them off beforehand. And then lastly is going to be kind of, are we having kind of that toxic culture where we maybe have a lot of abuse of our injury system? We have a lot of, us and them, right? Management doesn't care, right? All of those types of scenarios. Well, let's try and be more participatory. So looking at, maybe building an ergonomics committee and looking at some of your training. And so this would be, depending on where you are, what you're looking at, what drives your blueprint for 2025? Is it injuries? Then we need to be looking at some of these documentations and these pieces. If it's production, or if it's kind of your overall general culture. So we can easily try and prioritize these by asking these questions. Are we having high injuries, high turnover, poor productivity, poor quality? Other areas, if in 2025, you're going to be doing some remodeling, if there's new spaces, if there's maybe new positions or processes coming in, those are things that you could earmark in your 2025 plan. And if your injuries aren't doing too badly, and maybe you don't have a lot of new things coming down the pipe for your department or for the organization, then it's not to say that we can't still build out a plan for 2025. We would just go, again, data-driven. we would go to where are our highest number of employees, right? Because statistically, where our employees are the largest in volume, it's going to be where we have the most opportunity for injury, right? So now, this is all sounds well, but all of this, and I'm sure this is the part where you're at right now. I know listening to my husband and some of my friends who are kind of in these managerial positions and they're working out, it's all about your objectives and your budget for 2025. So let's try and make this kind of, again, based on data, what can we do? First and foremost, we know lost time is costly. So let's visit our early and safe return to work program. How do we develop a flow chart? Something that our supervisors are going to follow, something that our managers are going to follow, because everyone needs to be speaking this lingo. That is critical. And that is, regardless of the injury, what work do we have that you can do, right? So from an internal department, from your end, you need to know, what are your modified duties? What are your modified jobs? I don't hate using the term light duty because every job has light components, but where are those opportunities? And spending some time with your departments and your supervisors, your managers, and letting them know, this is the flow process. This is the jobs we have available. If someone calls in because of an injury, we have something for them to do. This in turn does two things. Yes, it minimizes your lost time, which is going to minimize your WSIB, but it is also going to start changing the culture. If you are an organization that's struggling with fraudulent claims, with some of that toxicity and the us and them, this process starts to weed some. There's no point trying to screw the system if the system's already been, tightened up and there's no way to do it. So it's just a path that people can no longer take. So definitely some cost savings there that we can get money from. We can also plan, actively trying to figure out let's try and get a WSIB rebate. Let's try and decrease our premiums. That can be impactful for bringing down some of that, maximizing your budget and allowing you to put that. One of the things that my clients that we work for is they negotiate kind of a deal, I guess, for lack of a better word, with the senior management team, is that any rebate they gets to be reinvested in your health and safety or ergonomics program, right? So that may be a way that you can actually bring money into your system. The next one is going to be trying to decrease the amount of discarded or unused products. And definitely this is maybe going to be leaning a little bit more towards the administrative, but my guess is there are literally tens of thousands of dollars on the table of products that your staff are ordering and being like, oh, this isn't working. And it ends up in a drawer. Or it wasn't vetted in the first place, and therefore it didn't do what they needed to do. And it's just kind of become stuck under the desk somewhere. Again, this is definitely going to move into manufacturing. Is the tooling you're picking? Is the anti-fatigue matting you're using? Like all of these, even the forklifts, are we vetting them ahead of time and giving our staff, like, this is our chosen product? So trying to get relationships where you can trial products, maybe ask for, I get clients all the time, send me an email saying, hey, Alex, my employees keep bringing this mouse to me. What is your thoughts? One is the Logitech mouse, the vertical Logitech mouse. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. It narrows too much. Everything that I want out of a vertical mouse, it doesn't give me because it actually creates a bit of pinch resistance. It's just not, I have yet to find, in fact, I've had 3 clients now have that go for a rush. Whenever someone needed a different mouse, they gave them that one. And I spent, I'm going to say, weeks and weeks doing assessments. And basically everyone's complaint was this mouse, right? Again, That's not the plan. That's not the plan. The plan is not to have me come in and undo something that went wrong. If you're going to use someone like me in your plan, then I would suggest using me for your proactive stuff, using me for the stuff that you need. PDAs take a lot of time. Even if you're very skilled at it, you have many hats to wear. I don't when I come in. I have one hat, and that is to do your PDAs. So don't hire a consultant to undo things if you can avoid it. That's definite. Jeff, you're asking which vertical mouse do I like? I definitely like the Evolent. I think it's got a really nice sturdy base. It's got a nice wide grip. You're not getting into these narrow pinch grips. But yeah, we can have that conversation offline, but there are better options. But that Logi mouse is the one that's being kind of pushed through your Staples and your Grain and Toy. So it's the one that people see first. The other thing to consider is if you know you're kind of going somewhere and you need this documentation or you need this help, whether it be with a consultant like myself, whether it be with your service providers or your vendors for product, the more you buy, the cheaper they can give it to you. So if you are thinking, okay, rather than wait for all of these to come in, maybe I'll try and get some done kind of ahead of time proactively and take use of that volume discount. And that doesn't necessarily mean I need to have, 10 office assessments to do in one day. You may have 3 office assessments and a PDA. Still, bringing us in for one day as opposed to 2 days is going to automatically get you a reduction on cost. So you can start saving pennies and maximizing, and it's not pennies, it's going to be potentially hundreds of dollars by maximizing your budget. Okay. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I think we've been talking about it throughout, but really when we're looking at our 2025 plan, looking at our opportunities for early detection, right? Again, trying to move our program as quickly and easily into a proactive program rather than a reactive program, because a reactive program is also going to be one of the things that's adding to that maybe politics, toxic, negative space when it comes to your program. If we can be out in front of it, typically now all of a sudden, oh no, they've already got this under control. Oh, I've heard we're already doing that this year. And it all comes into play. So some of the things here, looking again at our inspections, check out your employees' suggestions and concerns. I firmly believe they are the experts in what they do. And if you can get that information without having the negativity of pain and discomfort and frustration, they're usually really good, applicable, easy to move suggestions. Looking at your near misses, and then looking at kind of your awareness training, right? And I'll come back to that because I know I have another slide, which is this slide. So often what I hear and feel from my clients is that they kind of feel like the one person in a crowd of people holding up the white flag, kind of going like, I'm doing health and safety, I'm doing ergonomics, but everyone else isn't, right? So they often feel like they've been siloed, like they're feeling like they're the only one who's taking responsibility of this. And that is always going to be hard. Always going to be hard. So when it comes to trying to get some of these things done, specifically when we're talking about maybe some of our reactive issues and some of our proactive. So if I say here, talk about awareness training, I'm talking about that in a couple ways. First off, I want you to consider training your frontline staff and or your supervisory staff on ergonomics. And I'm going to suggest that if it's done well, that is not the same training. We do not do awareness training for supervisors the same way we do awareness training for employees. When we talk about awareness training for employees, we are talking about the work smarter, not harder, right? Like take the time, set yourself up, take the time, move your body appropriately, look for some of the hazards and look for ways that you can fix them, right? Whether that be this table is too high, it's okay. I have a box I can use to raise that up. And then if your employees are doing that, which would be fabulous, we then have these supervisors. And so the supervisors, we are training on kind of making sure, again, they're aware of those hazards, but how to pick up some of what I call my duct tape solutions, right? The putting the box on the table is what the employee has done to kind of duct tape their workstation together. We need to empower our supervisors to recognize that and either make the change themselves more permanently or ferry that information, whether that be to you, whether that be to operations, whether that be to engineering, and say, we need this, right? You do not need to run this program on your own. And the more participation you can get throughout, whether it be through each department kind of managing their own ergonomic issues and program, and kind of you having that being an overseer and guidance counselor on that. But we need to make sure that we are relying on the people that are kind of on the ground level in the day-to-day to fight some of the smoke, right? They're not fires yet. They're not costing anybody anything. It's a box. But a box is going to break down, and the next person may not recognize that there was even a box there to begin with and start working on the workstation that was already not up to par. Okay, so look at that. The other thing we can do from a cultural integration point is look at an ergonomics committee, which means something very different from your health and safety committee, right? When we start doing, and I teach at the college, the occupational health and safety program for HR. And when I talk to my students, you know, I say, when we're doing our risk assessment chapter, I kind of, okay, so I want you to learn this system because this is, you know, a fabulous tool to use to prioritize, get things off your laundry list, give yourself a rational, fair way of speaking to why you're working on what you're working and why you're not working on something that may have a lot of chatter about it, but isn't high risk. But I always have to put the caveat in, none of our risk assessment tools are the same as this. We do not assess risk the same way that we assess risk for safety. And that is because our frequency is always high, right? In fact, it's going to be ridiculously high to a point where it's really not even on a scale, because we have like a 1 would be multiple times a day. Well, we're talking like multiple times a minute. Right? So we're not accurately capturing that. The other thing is our consequence is relatively low. As I said to my students, no one is going to die from an ergonomic injury, right? So at best, we're going to get lost time, right? So it doesn't accurately score our risk. And so we can have tons of ergonomic issues that just aren't making it up the ladder because the health and safety things are going to knock it down. And so having a separate committee talking about ergonomics, educating themselves, talking about, you know, again, some of that cultural knowledgeable piece, we can get a little bit further ahead in our program this year. And then lastly, if we're looking at culture and kind of getting some excitement around ergonomics, getting people to, you know, just hold the smarter, not harder philosophy to heart, because it's available in every job. We all have a way of working smarter, not harder, and that is always going to positively impact ergonomics. And that is have fun, right? Create competitions, whether, you know, you get, I mean, one of our nicknames is posture police. So, you know, one year we had a client and they got these bright neon turquoise shirts and they put like a sheriff symbol on it and it said posture police. And so when they were about the floor, like it was all about your job is to kind of talk about posture with people, not correct posture, not be mean about, you know, you guys aren't, you know, but make it a positive conversation. But have fun, create challenges. We do it in the wellness space. It's not a far step. Wellness and ergonomics, they can move quite hand in hand. So take some of those wellness challenges and move them into some of your ergonomics challenges and have some fun. Because in 2025, as I said, it's going to be a good year and we're going to have fun with this. Okay, so I did run a little bit late. We only have about 3 minutes or so. I am willing to stay back a little bit longer if people have questions, but at this time, if you have any questions or comments you would like to make or share, things that you are going to be doing that maybe other people could, be like, oh, that's exactly what I need to do for my program, please put them in the chat. I love that when we can share and learn from each other. As I said, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? We want this year to be successful. We want it to be easy. And ideally, we want it to be as low cost as possible because, as I said in some of our past webinars, those are the preferences. Yeah, I'm just putting in right now. Oh, I gotta remember how to spell it. Ebullient. Ebullient? I think it's ebullient. Sorry, someone was asking about the mouse. This may not be spelled correctly. Yes, thanks, Jeff. Yeah. Now you do need to be a little bit careful. They come in different sizes and they do run a little big. So one thing I would suggest, oh, this is more for those of you in the office or, administration side. I would suggest you guys create a toolkit just for yourselves. Get a tote that you're going to put in your whatever closet or somewhere, but buy some of these specialty office items. Maybe get an ebullient mouse in some different sizes. Maybe get a waved keyboard or a separated keyboard. What's another thing? Ooh, the big one is the roller mouse. It is spendy, but if you're having ambidextrous bilateral issues, it can save your bacon. But you don't want to give them necessarily out every time. So have your toolbox and they can trial it. We actually have Sue on and she is from Ergo Now and she deals with like product. So she would be a great resource to ask for, some of the, what are things that are being successful? What are things maybe you get returned? That type of thing. But because honestly, I will say where it comes to product, I am a tried and true girl. And we get a lot of new product come in and I obviously am not buying everything to trial out here myself. And we get quite a few and I try as much as I can, but there are certain things that I definitely find that I like more. So again, that goes into those relationships. Build relationships with people that can make your job easier. We're not expecting you to be a product specialist. I'm not even a product specialist. And so who can maybe make those referrals? When we do our assessments, we give you, after over 25 years of experience, this is what consistently has worked. And this is why, because the data and the research behind it is strong and the anecdotal commentary is equally as strong. Perfect. Thank you, Sue. Okay, so Sue has actually put her contact in the chat. So again, if you're looking for someone to kind of maybe help with some of the product, she sells product herself, so you can obviously get it off Ergo Now's site. Great site, lots of ergo stuff. But she's a great resource. So, all right. Is there any other questions? All right. Well, if not, I wish you all the best in 2025. Again, if part of what I said was maybe striking a chord and being like, oh, that's really interesting. I don't quite understand how I'm supposed to get there. Send me an email. We can put together a team shot. We can spend 10, 15 minutes just kind of clarifying what that would look like for you and see where we can go. But this is the time to do it because although I want 2025 to be all great, all good, I have a feeling it's going to be busy. Have a feeling we're all going to be very, very busy. So let's take this little bit of reprieve that we usually get at the beginning of the year and do some of our kind of legwork in making the rest of our year a little bit easier. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Timothy. I appreciate that. And good luck.